Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and good morning, depending upon where you're logging in from. Welcome, all of you, to this wonderful session that we have laid out today on behalf of TLR Now under our Ask Me Anything series. The genesis of this series is simple. Culturally, we are a civilization who has learned through questioning. So, this session is all about questioning and learning. Our guest today is Nidhi Sharma. Nidhi is a counseling psychologist, life coach, a trainer, an NLP practitioner, and an image consultant. That's so many hats to wear when I can't even wear one. Welcome, Nidhi. And today we would want to talk to you and hear from you on your perspective on work-life balance in the context of the lockdown.
Thank you, Sri Ram. You are breaking, so I guess connection is playing havoc today with us. Um, so yes, I would love to discuss with you work-life balance. Where do we begin?
Sure, we can. My first question is extremely simple. And yes, the audience, you can type in your questions as the session progresses. We'd be more than happy to hear from you. Yeah. Sure. My first question is extremely simple, Nidhi.
Sure.
Does work-life balance make any sense in the world that we are in today?
A great question. Work-life balance. Did it even make sense before? Because if you would read up on this topic, and it's a fairly well discussed topic as such, it's a very elusive animal, and in my mind, it's very personal to each one of us how we define work-life balance. Um, However, to the context of the lockdown, yes, I think at this point in time, it's become extremely important that we actually pay a little bit of attention to our work-life balance, especially when the lines are actually blurred. Initially, 21, 22, 30 days ago, the mind knew that when we stepped out of home, there was an office, and we went there, and there was a completely different space and environment. And then you came back to a space which was your personal space. But in the current scenario, as you know, we are in that one space which we called home or our personal space, so to speak. So it is extremely important that we draw those lines. We know when work begins and when play starts, and when play ends and when work begins. So in my mind, yes, considering the time that we are in, we need to become more serious about uh, taking care of our work-life balance. I seem to have lost Sri Ram in this connectivity challenge. So what I will do is that I will take Sri Ram's question and elaborate further. I was talking about maintaining, he had asked me whether it's important to have that work-life balance even in these times. And I said that yes, it is very, very important. See, you need to understand that mind has learned over the years which space belongs where. So when you go to work, when I go to work, I know this is my workspace. But today I'm not doing that. And we are always in this known, familiar environment, which was our home, which are our personal space. So the poor thing is so confused. When do I do what? So it's very, very important that we start thinking about work-life balance uh, actively. So I do have a couple of suggestions that I can make. I will make during this conversation, if I can have one, provided Shriram logs in back. So I'm sorry about this network issues. If you guys can just give us some few minutes, I guess Shriram will be. Okay, so shall we wait for Sri Ram? Uh, Let me give you all a bit of interesting, facts about work-life balance. It's a concept that we all have heard of. We all have maybe read about it. We've talked about it in different manners. But before I go there, I want to tell you that what is work-life balance for me can be very different from what is work-life balance for someone else. Now, for me, working 6 hours and having 6 hours for something else might be, work-life balance. But for somebody else, working 10 hours might be work-life balance. Oh, I see Shriram is back. Hi, Shriram, are you coming back?
Hi. Yes, on some technology issues because of which I got thrown out. I guess that's the way things are now. So,
No.
Nidhi, please continue where you were. I'd love to
Yes,
hear from you. Yeah.
sure. So Shriram was just kind of filling in before you came in that what is work-life balance to me. To me it might be 6 hours of work every day, and rest of the time I might be doing something unrelated to work, which is important to me. And to somebody else, work-life balance might be um, working for 10 hours a day. So each one of us have to define what is that balance, and then work towards getting that balance. So that's
So
what.
why is it so important, Nidhi? I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people.
Um, I think Shriram was asking me why is it so important to have a work-life balance. Um, well, the reason it is very important is that there is that word there called life, you know, and interestingly, work is part of life. It's not the other way around. Life is not part of work. Work is one of the components that makes this whole gambit what we call life. There are lots of other quadrants that make us whole and complete and are very, very important for our well-being. There is work, there is finance, there is our intimate relationships, there is our family, there is a leisure time, there is a me time, my personal growth, very, very important, or my spiritual aspect. Then there is the health, and then the environment that I live in. There are almost 8 different aspects to life. So, considering that work is one of the aspects of life, it becomes very important that we put work in perspective to life and not the other way around. Now, again, as I'm saying, this is my perspective and my belief that it's important for us to, balance it, because when we don't, the repercussions of that, unfortunately, are rather heavy. And the first repercussion that we actually see that work-life balance is going haywire is when it comes to the physical aspect. If you don't believe me, talk to or in your family, you may be having a friend who's a doctor. Talk to them, and in all honesty, they will tell you what they call lifestyle diseases. Most diseases today are lifestyle diseases. Where are they coming from?
Mhm.
They come from stress. They are most of them are mental and emotionally driven. So unfortunately, if work-life balance is not brought to at least some kind of semblance, um, our emotions, our mental health starts to get affected. And when mental health and emotional health gets affected, physical health gets affected.
Mhm.
Uh, Lucky are those who catch their physical ailments at the very start. However, we know we've heard of so many people who catch ailments at the last stages and it's devastating for them. And their loved ones don't even know what happened. So, the point I'm trying to make is that we have to balance our mental health, we have to balance our physical health and our emotional health to ensure that there is a holistic well being in our life. Shriram, I see that you're there.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting, Nidhi. But if I can just push back a bit on what you said.
Sure.
So you spoke about the physical dimension, the emotional dimension, and the mental dimension. And yes, these three are extremely critical.
Yes.
But what is it that one can start doing? How does one actually go about doing something? I mean, there seems to be no time. I'm working 16 hours a day. I'm talking to people all day. How do I start doing something about it? I genuinely want to do something.
Sure. So, a very, very good question actually, and that's something that people ask often. That it's very easy for you to say do this. I understand it's easier said than done. However, like any space, Sri Ram start at the very beginning. The famous
Mhm.
song that we have. You have to start at the beginning, and that is when you take stock of what is important. What is important to you? About 10, 11 years ago, I'm not sure whether I took a conscious decision, but I now realize that it was a default decision where I started to push back on my work and say I needed to have a balance. Something was not okay. And that's when I started to work for myself. And today I am extremely zealous of that 2 hour space that I have in the evening where I go for a run or a workout. Now, the point I'm trying to drive here is that you have to start asking yourself what is important. If our children are important to us, then you have to prioritize them. You have to prioritize your time with them. So, to start with, start at the beginning and ask yourself what is important. Make a note of it and then stick it in your calendar to say, this is what I will do.
Mhm.
Coming from there is a much bigger aspect. Those two parts are actually easier to do. The second aspect, which comes when you have actually defined what is important to us, is to stand up for yourself.
Mhm.
अक्सर होता है when I'm in a session and we talk about these kind of things, people say कि yes ma'am, I know that my children are important, I know my health is important, but you know what, there is so much of work, well, how do I do?
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, my answer to that is that you have to push back. There is a time for work and there is a time for play and there's a time for you to stand up for yourself. We
Mhm.
have to learn to say no.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, to come back to your question, where do we start? I think learning to say no and standing up for ourselves, what we believe in, is extremely important. And then defending it. You know,
Mhm.
so, of
Nice,
course,
nice.
we have to be flexible about it. Also, it's not a
Mhm.
perfectly the case that you have to be flexible as well.
True, true. So as I see it, Nidhi, there is in in the practical world out there, I think there are a lot more stakeholders out there in this
Right.
entire process of uh, the work-life balance.
Right.
While at an individual level, I can aspire to do something. I can maybe make a note. I learn to push back. I learn to prioritize, etc.
Right.
Would you want to talk to us about something that you see organizations doing
Right.
based on your interaction and experience in this space? What
Right.
are organizations actually doing to help facilitate the work-life balance in today's scenario?
In the lockdown scenario, you mean?
Yes.
Um, I really don't have data as such to authenticate what they are doing, Though I do know that there are certain, and I'm not just talking about MNCs, I'm talking of even homegrown Indian organizations who are focused on their employees' well-being. So they do various kind of things. They make sure that they have this outsider platform where there is a health expert who talks to them, provides them with healthy tips, eating tips, diet plans. There are crutches available for the mothers, younger mothers, to be able to look after their children and be closer to them. There are downtimes allowed. uh, People are allowed to actually work from home, be flexible. So organizations do a lot. However, coming to the lockdown period, um, I've been hearing from my daughter is very young, and she is a young workforce, part of that. And she as well as some of the webinars that I've been doing, where I've been hearing from people that they have been very busy. They seem to be working double of the time that they were working before. Now, two things have happened. One is because the lines have gotten blurred. We don't know when we are stepping into work and when we are stepping out of work. अब तो हम घर पे हैं, so let's continue. At this point in time, I think the ownership is on the leadership, on the managers, on the bosses, and our team leaders to actually look at the people that they work with and tell them it's enough. You know, you can come back tomorrow. It's been 8 hours, it's been 9 hours. Ask about their well-being. If you know that people have young children at home, ask them how they're coping with it. Often having a very simple dialogue is helpful in giving somebody a bit of a relaxed space. Otherwise, especially since time was so right now the insecurity is so high that I don't know whether I'll have my job or not. That also pushes me to put in that extra hour. Now, Shriram, we know that this if this continues, where my personal life is not being taken care of, which I don't just mean the family, I mean I myself as a human being, I'm not, getting a downtime. I cannot be productive. So I think the first step that the leaders have to do is become very mindful of what their teams are doing, push them into taking that little break that they should be doing, ask after them, insist that there is a downtime, and overall keep a track of their employees and their teammates.
That's interesting, Nidhi. That's very interesting to see it from a leader's perspective. What else do you think the leadership ought to be doing? Because on one hand, there is a work-life balance that leadership is trying to set an example. We have instances of leaders commenting on social media, putting up pictures of them balancing their work life, etc. But as you said, these are uncertain times. So, how do they actually institutionalize this down the line through their managers? And that brings me to the point, what do you think are the skills that managers need to develop in themselves, which organizations can facilitate, so that they can take a more humane approach towards managing their teams?
A great question, actually, and a great thought. Um, there is no way to achieve work-life balance if it's not driven in our organizations, in our companies, and it has to be top-driven. It's a value that an organization has to bring to the table. There are very interesting research and surveys which are done worldwide. Almost 50,000 employees across the world were, questioned about the kind of what makes them look towards feel happy with an organization. And the second choice that they made was work-life balance. And coming pertaining to India, there was a survey done in India with about 1,000 odd people, where again, employees, 39% of the employees said that they wanted better work culture. So there is a need from the employees' end for organizations to have better work culture, and we know millennials thrive on that. They are very clear that there is a playtime and there is a work time, and my work time supports my playtime. Right? So the culture in the organization has to be driven. The top management has to drive it down, and that's the only way the teams will learn to do that. So there are various things that organizations can do. Is that first of all, uh, the managers and the leaders have to understand what employee well-being really means. Is it simply allowing people, a health expert and a good diet, or is it more than that? So, providing employees with an employee assistance programs, the EAP programs, where counselors like me come into play, who are made available to the employees so that they can actually have a conversation with them if they're facing any mental or emotional challenge. And there are lots of challenges that people face, and they don't know where to turn to. Uh,
Okay.
Third thing that organizations can do is, and leaders can do, is what we call energy management. Not just physical, again, mental, emotional energies need to be managed. People need to be kept more robust and agile. Resource management, especially manpower planning. We have to know, how much resources are needed in actually delivering a particular for a particular team, for a particular department, task, force, project, and so on and so forth. Managers need to be put through, programs that can help them understand their managerial styles, their what really work-life balance is. How can we have a coaching style, managing style, leadership, so that we are more compassionate, we have more empathetic towards the people that we work with. Those are the ways that an organization can actually drive work-life balance with their employees and staff.
Wonderful. That's interesting, Nidhi. If I can just pick your brains about the EAP you spoke about,
Right.
what's the entire premise of an EAP? What is the end objective?
Okay. So EAP is, I think it's a fairly new concept in India as such. Though it's not that Indian organizations are not adapting it. It is called assistance programs. Now, what happens is that, especially, and it's very, very popular, almost every organization abroad worth its salt will have an EAP program, where a counselor or a battery of counselors are made available to the employees to be able to call in and talk to the counselors. Now, these services are paid by the organization. However, every information is confidential. So it's unlike coaching, where an organization takes up a coaching for their um, uh, senior or mid-level staff, and there's a set objective that the organization gives. In an EAP program, the only thing organization gives is the platform that the person can reach out to a counselor for support. And it's often seen that organizations which have an EAP programs actually have much more holistic, much more balanced uh, employees, so to speak, because they know they can go somewhere, they can talk to somebody. So a counselor can be talking to them on various fronts. They can be talking about parenting. They can be talking about abuse, addiction, even divorces. Even sometimes colleagues leave, and we don't realize it, but it's actually a loss. If my colleague I was very close to, or my boss who I worked very closely to, leaves and goes, the fact is it impacts me. So issues like that, even financial challenges. So almost every aspect of mental and emotional health and EAP program supports the employees.
Wonderful. That's very interesting, Nidhi, that it has a very holistic approach.
Yes, it
So
does.
I want to now move on to the next stakeholder. We spoke of organization as one of the stakeholders. We spoke of leaders as one of the stakeholders. Now, I got this thought as you were speaking about teams. Now, the team we work with is a very big stakeholder. And today we are connected with the team even more. I
Right,
mean, we are literally connected with the team in all ways. So,
right.
how can teams support each other in work life balance?
Well, teams are the building blocks. Haven't you heard, Shriram, that we have a work wife and a work husband? Have you heard
Hmm.
that
Yes,
concept?
yes, I have.
I
Yes,
mean,
I have.
and I think it's great because we spend more time at work than we spend at home, right? So from where I see it, the concept, I mean, it might be a joke, but the thing is that these are the team members who support us. They're the ones who are there when we've fallen down or when we are facing a challenge. They help us, they stand with us, they support us, and the whole thing, right? So at this point in time also, I would recommend to almost everybody who's listening in, and if they are working in teams, call each other up, ask each other how you're doing. Make sure that every other day you make that one little call of 30 seconds or a minute just to find out how your colleague is doing, how their spouses are doing, their parents are doing. People are stuck away from home, and all of that, nobody's able to go out, etc. We're all in the same space, right? Ask about the people's well-being. And trust me, uh, just asking somebody how you're doing has such wonderful impact on the well-being. I know that I'm wanted. I know that I'm cared for. I know somebody is looking out for me and thinking for me. And as a human being, that's my most basic need of being wanted, of being relevant. So yes, teams should be playing a very important role. And in fact, just 2 days ago, when I was talking to on a coaching call, with somebody fairly senior, so he asked me a very related question to what you've said. He says, now that we are working remotely, Nidhi, one thing that I have, we keep hearing about people talking on a meeting and all of that. I wanted to know, is it okay to talk personal thing in the meeting, in this kind of, that Zoom kind of a meeting that people are doing? So I asked him, I said, what do you mean by personally? He said, is it okay that I get in and I ask people how they're doing and what's happened? Um, uh, at that outset, it kind of surprised me because it's the most basic thing that I thought that should be done. Yes, absolutely. If you're doing a Zoom meeting or any platform that you're using to have these collective meetings that you're having nowadays, of course, if you have half an hour, spend 3 to 4 minutes asking everybody, how they are, if they have all the supplies, if get to know your teammates better. If you know somebody is diabetic, ask them if they have the medicines available or how their sugar levels doing, or if they have any kind of related ailments, the children, the parents, pets, whatever. Just ask. If you have 10 people in your team and you can't be taking each one's name, at least ask 3 people. Make it personal and then get into the agenda.
So, what do you think stops us from doing this? Now, this is something that can be done even when we were not in a lockdown situation. And obviously, in a lockdown situation, these become more important. But based on your experience, uh, why do we think we hesitate to do these things?
Why do we hesitate to show our affection to anybody? Why do we hesitate to connect with anybody? Do we want to? We're vulnerable. We're scared. We're insecure. We're competitive. We don't trust people. We think if I become too close, our bosses think if I become too close to him or her, they will take advantage of me. They will not listen to me. They will not respect me, and so on. I can go on and on. It's the basic insecurity that stops us from doing such a simple thing. One. Secondly, and this is going to sound much cynical, rude, and so on and so forth. Who has ever taught us to do this? Has anybody taught us to be human? Nobody has. Even managers, they become managers. They're given a designation of managers. Are they actually taught how to be managers? So, and it's very interesting, having said that organizations are actually taking up coaching leadership as part of their first-time managers. So they are bringing that human part, they're bringing that, softer part of emotional intelligence into it. I think I've lost Sri Ram again, and I see Ankur Veermani is asking a question where he says, with businesses taking a hit, revenues down, how to remain emotionally connected with team members? Opening up during these times is quite tough. Absolutely, Ankur. I really value that question. I hope that through my talk you have gotten some gist. My friend, the only way to stay connected with people is asking about their well-being. Maybe telling them a little bit, if you're a team leader, know your teams a little better, give them a little bit of a leeway, be flexible. Sometimes insist they take a downtime. Connect with them. Just connection here does not mean saying, hi, how are you? Also knowing their challenges that they may be facing. Listen to the things that they're not saying and pick up on that and then talk to them about it. And that's one of the way being that you can actually connect. Sri Ram, you're back again. So I took up a question that Ankur had asked Sri Ram in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, he wanted to know how to connect, remain emotionally connected with the teammates during this time. So I think I've answered. I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you. I think there was some disturbance again, and I had to step out and step in again. So, Nidhi, based on what you've said, in terms of how leaders need to cooperate, managers need to cooperate, organization, team members, when the entire ecosystem needs to cooperate.
Yes.
I think I'm sensing that there is a strong need for us to re-examine and maybe reinvest our thoughts in developing emotional intelligence in our workforce,
Oh, absolutely,
including each
absolutely.
one of us.
Absolutely.
Would you want to talk to us about that? What dimensions of emotional intelligence make specific sense in the context we are in today?
Right. Before I get there, I'm sorry, but I really want to say this. I read a very interesting thing somewhere. When all this is over, let's not get the normal back, because normal is not working.
Right.
Look at us. It's not working. It's time to bring in the human side of us. And if you're not going to learn from this, then my friend, I'm not sure you and I will live to see that day when we have become more human. So yes, being human means being emotionally intelligent, which means we are more self-aware, which means that we assess ourselves, we understand, first start with ourselves. We are the most important person in our lives. So the more we understand ourselves, the more we can actually support and help ourselves. When we understand and support ourselves, we become more compassionate, we become more empathetic, we learn to have better interpersonal skills. The other day, I can't recall where I was having this conversation, where somebody said that if there is one skill that everybody should be taught, then that is effective communication. Because interpersonal skills is so important in being productive and efficient, and that's what emotional intelligence is. Learning to develop relationships, knowing when I can step in, when I can step back, how to actually manage my emotions. Being angry is fine, but there is a time and place to be angry, there's a time and place to be quiet. Practicing active listening. I did a parenting workshop yesterday, and a lot of parents came back and said, you're right, we don't listen to our children. And the same thing happens with employees. We don't listen to our colleagues. So emotional intelligence needs to really grow. And the best way to do it is that have training interventions, have coaching interventions, put people through certain programs over a period of time, monitor them, talk to them and see how they're developing. More importantly, reward them for their interpersonal skills so that we become more human.
Interesting. That's a lot of nice inputs there, Nidhi, in terms of. So I see this as a glorious opportunity for organizations to invest in their people to be far more humane and far more productive.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And deliver to those organization goals.
Yes.
So I have a question by Geeta Verma here.
Yes.
And she says, emotional engagement may be the new skill that we all need to learn.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with that statement?
110%. I wish I've been doing a lot of emotional intelligence, sessions with corporates and all of that. I wish they would not leave it just with one session. I wish they would do a regular interventions and coachings and counselings to help people become more robust with their emotional and mental health. It's so important, Shriram. I wish I could show you my heart when I say it's so important for people, for our productivity. Organizations' health can always be measured with their people's mental and emotional health. Look around, name any great organization. Let's take Tata's for example. Most people who work at Tata's will tell you that they're so well looked after. The definition of look after may differ from people to people, organization to organization, but the fact that the organization looks after, they treat their people as people is so important. You'll be surprised. I recently heard someone tell me this. I was on a webinar, and supply chain guys have serious amount of stress right now. So one of the guys said that, ma'am, we are working like 12 hours, 13 hours a day. And what shocked me was that apparently somebody told them, Abhi to you are not coming, you're saving time, commute time, 2 hours, 3 hours every day. Don't you think you should be putting that time in work? It just shocks me that somebody can talk like that. Are you paying that employee for that travel time? You're not. I travel at my time to come to work, right? If I have to be at office at 9 o'clock, I leave my place at 7:30 or 8. You're not paying me for that. I mean, if this is the kind of talk and conversations if leaders have with their teams, it's a sad state.
Yeah, I have here. Nidhi, I have an interesting statement by Yashpal Singh Chauhan, who says, engage, educate, encourage, empower people. It's as simple as that, and things will take care of themselves.
Of course, he's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
In fact, what we are doing should help people.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Yashpal. I think you kind of encapsulated that amazingly well. I have another question from Nalin Chandra Nidhi. He says, and his question at its core is very simple. And if I may read out, how do we cut off work and get into family time?
Do we want to get into family time is the first question I would ask.
I'm sure he does. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked the question.
I didn't mean Nalin. I meant to anybody. I don't really have a concrete answer to that, Shriram. What I would say is that in our mind, we need to have a silo to begin with. I'm not much of a fan of silos as such because they kind of block us off. But in this case, yes, you need to have a silo. You need to tell yourself what I started at the beginning of saying, that you need to prioritize. You need to know what is important. I would go to the extent of saying that, when I sometimes when I teach productivity, I teach them a 10 and 30 rule, right? 10 minutes every day and 30 minutes every week is what you need to do to make sure that you think about yourself. And that's the rule I would give Nalin at this point in time. Have some time allocated for yourself. That, I would take 15 minutes for myself and I would take half an hour with my family. And make it sacrosanct. I will have dinner with my family means I will have dinner with my family. You'll be surprised. I was talking to a busy executive. His daughter was in counseling with me, a young girl of about 14 years of age. And through the conversation, I realized that she barely saw the dad. The father traveled 2 hours, 2.5 hours each side every day. When I told the dad that, I need you to spend at least half a day with your daughter, the look on his face was like, I felt on one side as a counselor, I felt angry. As a parent, I could understand. He didn't know how to balance it. So it was like, when do I do it? How do I do it? So then we had a conversation, and I kind of highlighted to him how important it was for his child's development to have that half an hour every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally told him, tell your bosses you're not available between this and this time, and they need to respect that. So I'll come back to my second point that I had made in the beginning. Push back, my friends. Stand up for yourself and say, no, this is enough. This is my family time. And be very protective about it. Play games with your family. Talk to them about some new show that you're doing. Instead of just have a dinner, cook something. There's so many things that you can do with your friends and family and loved ones and the extended families that we have. So I hope I've answered that for Nalin.
Yep. Yeah. So, Nidhi, that brings me to another question in the context of the stakeholders that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So, do you think uh, the lockdown is a wake up call for organizations to explore families as a very critical stakeholder along with the employees?
Yes.
And what do you think they can explore for these stakeholders in these times, and hopefully going forward when the situation normalizes, one hopes as soon as possible?
Um, See, to me, this situation that we are in is, I almost see it from a spiritual point that nature is coming back to us and hitting us very hard to say, become human. Understand what is important
Hmm.
for yourself. Please understand what is important, and of course, in the food chain where humans belong. That's the second part. Family is a very, very integral part of who we are. Again, at the beginning, I had talked about, I think you had gone off when I was talking about life. We have life. Work is an aspect of it. Family is an
Hmm.
aspect. All the quadrants are interconnected. Tell me, Shriram, if your health is not okay, can you be more productive? Can you be productive at home, at work?
Not at all. Not at
No.
all. Not at all.
Similarly, if your work life is not going okay, will you have a great intimate relationship with someone?
No.
Not at all. It is going to, right? So they see through. So family is a very, very important stakeholder. In fact, the most important because they make us who we are. They motivate us. Most of us, in my sessions when I talk to people, one question I ask them: tell them who is the most important person in your life till date. Nobody has written anybody's name other than their family. Family means mother, father, children, and spouse. Very few people even go till their brothers and sisters. And if they are the motivators that we have, then it's very important that organizations bring and embrace that aspect. Now, I'm not talking about that, once a year family outing that you have and you took all the ladies with you and all their spouses with you and the children are invited. I'm not talking about that.
Hmm.
At a very serious note, engage with families. Uh, Very interestingly, if you're aware of the armed forces or the central government, the UPSC culture, the railways and the IAS officers and the armed forces and the police and all of that, their spouses are expected to be involved with uh, their other part of the spouses, right? So, for example, Army has a Army Wives Welfare Association. Railways has a Railway Wives Welfare Association. Well, it shouldn't be gender based anymore, right? But so they understand the importance of the family coming into play. Private
Hmm.
organizations have to engage that, involve the family in maybe having a little get together that teams can have together. Maybe they can engage in some kind of social activities. You can give them a family holiday package or a gym membership or a club membership. There's so much that you can do to support the family and the family time. I
Okay.
mean,
So
you
I
just
have,
have to.
indeed, Nidhi. I think there is a lot that can be done. I have two questions here. One from Anjana, who says, what happens when you understand you want to spend your time with your family, etc., but you just do not get support from the people around? So how do you actually handle this situation? And I
Right.
think you may want to go back to the pushback concept. Maybe shed some more light on how does one go about it.
So, what I would like to say to Anjana is that we need to look at ourselves, our needs. Look, if you fly, they tell you, right? Go put the oxygen mask first on your mouth and then put it on, help someone else. Life is also like that. Unless you support yourself, unless you look after yourself, nobody else is going to look after you.
True.
Because you're not important to yourself, why will you be important to someone else? So, coming to the question that if you want to find the time, see, there is a way of talking. There is a way you can have a conversation with someone. Me telling you, suppose Sri Ram, that Sri Ram, don't disturb me. This is my personal time, and I want to do what I want to do. That's one way of saying it, and you can retaliate. In another way is that Sri Ram, I would really like to tell you that 10 minutes every day. I really want to be by myself, and I'm having a cup of tea at this time. Can I just be please left alone? It's important to me. It keeps me sane. Now that's a different kind of a conversation. Talk to people, talk to those who are there. And if people are getting demanding, sometimes learn to turn a deaf ear, don't we?
Sure, sure. I think
We
that's
do that a lot of times. Turn a deaf
yeah,
ear.
yeah,
They can learn.
yeah.
Children
That's
learn, my friend. Children learn when they keep on prodding their mothers and they don't listen. After some time, they also turn around and go away and leave you.
sure.
So you
I'll
have
just take Yeah, I'll just take one more question, Nidhi, before we wind up. We are close to time. Ruchika has a question, an interesting one. What online training initiatives do you recommend to skill and motivate employees during COVID times?
yeah. So there are lots of training programs that depends on the requirement that people have. However, coming from a behavioral skill aspect, from human development aspect, is you should encourage people to get into, if they can do transactional analysis kind of a training program, which is very good to understand interpersonal relationships. If they can do emotional intelligence programs, that's great. Communication programs, crisis management, critical thinking, decision making, problem solving. These are all great programs to become more effective and efficient.
Thank you, Nidhi. And I think we seem to have covered quite a bit of ground here today, given
Right.
the time that we have. So, as a parting shot, if I were to ask you, and I'm a great believer in the power of three, if there were three things you would want to leave our audience with, what would it be? Or what would they be?
Can I tell you four things?
Oh, sure, sure. One on the house, absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, so again, I've been repeating myself, and I'll sound like a parrot here. Learn to prioritize. Very, very important that we learn to prioritize. What is it that is important to us? Um, I chose my health was important, and so I don't work between 5:30 and 7:30 in the evening, almost every day. Right? You have to make that choice. You have to prioritize. Um, Once you have learned to prioritize, the second thing that I would tell you is create a me time. 10 minutes every day, 15 minutes every day. That cup of coffee or tea, even if you're at work, doesn't matter. So one of the ways that you can create that me time, and that this is a great tip to do, is that which can be very, very helpful, is um, I tell people, a lot of my clients whom I coach and counsel, I teach them this: 1 minute silence 5 times a day. 1 minute silence 5 times a day. All I expect you to do is count back from 60, take a deep breath, just be alone, look outside the window. Maybe if you want, go and sit in the loo if that's what would help you. If you can, I mean, today you can't walk out, but go near the window, go to the balcony, wherever you can, and just be silent for a minute, 5 times a day. You know, it's extremely helpful, very, very helpful to help you settle down and analyze about yourself. Great emotional self-awareness can happen. The third thing I would say, again, I'll be sounding like a repeat parrot, is learning to say no. Learn to be assertive. Remember, when you say no, you don't say no to a person, you say no to a task. Very different. You can always do the task at another time. You're not saying no to the person. That's what we worry. That if we say no to someone, the person will feel offended. It's not like that.
Mhm.
And the last thing that I would say is um, have a calendar. Literally, we have smartphones. Use the technology that it is meant for. You know, instead of just chatting and things like that, make use of it. Block the time. Literally block the time. Because what happens is it's a visual reminder to the mind when you open it and it sends you a reminder. You see, Array, all this is filled in. Two things happen. One, you don't take on extra. Second, and more important thing, which is extremely important for the mind, it looks at it and tells you, wow, I had such a productive day. I did so much today, right? So these are the four things. Learn to prioritize, learn to have a me time, learn to say no, and have a calendar.
Thank
And
you
you can
so much,
start
Nidhi.
most of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was an extremely insightful conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Please stay safe and do follow TLR now on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. Watch out for more programs from our end during the COVID times and even after the COVID times. To reiterate, stay safe, stay secure, spend time with your families, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Taylor. Now, be safe, everybody. Happy living. Bye bye.
Bye bye.